And without any further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome our speaker today. Representative Dean Urdahl is in his 10th term in the Minnesota House of Representatives. A member of the Republican Party of Minnesota, he represents District 18A, which includes parts of McLeod, thank you, Meeker and Wright counties in the central part of the state, just west of the Twin Cities metropolitan area. He taught American history for 35 years at New London Spicer Public Schools and is the author of 9 published books. His writings deal primarily with the Dakota War of 1862 and the American Civil War. He's a graduate of Litchfield High School and St. Cloud State University. His major legislative accomplishments include initiating the investment tax credit for livestock, lockdown drills for school security, and the renovation of the Capitol. He and his wife, Karen, have 3 sons and 11 grandchildren. Representative Urdahl, welcome. It's our pleasure to have you. The floor is yours. I'm going to pull up your presentation. Give me a wink or a nod or something when it's time to change slides.
Okay. And I also have a puppy named Buster, who is 1 year and 3 months old and graduates tomorrow from his obedience school.
I had a dog named Buster. Good name.
So I think if you hit the slideshow button there at the top.
Slideshow. The bar. Oh, there we go. I've got to move the bar from the.
And then go to from the beginning, the far left there. Now you got it. All righty. So you can start her in here. Next slide.
What was my intention here?
You can use an arrow.
Yeah, okay. Oh, now it is. Okay. Sorry about that.
Except for one thing. This might not be the, oh, it isn't. This is not the one I want to do.
Oh, would you like to pull up yours? This is what Jennifer sent me.
Yeah, she sent you the wrong one.
Oh,
I've got 3 of them. One is on the standards changes, one is on civics, and one combines the standards and civics. And I think I'd rather, if I can do it, just do the civics. So if you could, now I should be able to do this.
Yep. I have been jinxed with technology lately. I'm hoping I can shake it, but things like buttons not working, it's a story of my life. So I appreciate everybody's patience.
All right, but here's a problem that I have. And that is at the top of my screen, the bar that says I'm screen sharing is covering what I need to click on.
You should be able to pull it down. That's exactly what I just had. Just kind of grab it and pull it down.
Okay, there we go.
I totally feel you.
Let's see.
Joe.
All righty, now we got her.
Great.
Okay, civics in crisis. The former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor stated, "We are facing a crisis in civics." The National College Board reports, and I have to minimize this over here. The National College Board reports that the most important skills correlated with success in college are computer science and the United States Constitution. 77% of Americans between 18 and 34 can't name even one of their U.S. senators. 2/3 of Americans can name at least one judge on American Idol. 15% can name the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. 2/3 of Americans can name only one branch of our government. 1/3 can't name any. The National Association of Education Progress, or NAEP, called the nation's report card, reports that 3rd graders show progress in civics knowledge. 8th grade knowledge level flatlines. Civics in Minnesota is mostly taught in 9th grade. Seniors graduate with about a 25% proficiency. In other words, pretty much 3 out of 4 of our graduates in the state of Minnesota leave high school not knowing how our government works. Why? Why has this happened? Well, there's been a focus on STEM education, which is important. I mean, science, technology, engineering, and math are very, very important in our country today. But when one area is emphasized, there's a de-emphasis in another. And what has happened is that civics and history have been pushed aside as the others, as STEM is emphasized. Nordic educators work hard to cultivate each student's connection to their nation. We largely fail to identify in national terms in this country. Now, local school boards face a lot of challenges in balancing curricula and in other areas. And so as we continue along, more and more electives are in demand and all of these other areas, and our course, going back to STEM is in demand. And so our local school boards have these challenges of how to balance this, how to make sure that what is being taught is what is needed to be known, but also that students are able to take courses that they want. So you have a little conflict between what you want to know and what you need to know. When taught effectively, civics can help equip students with the knowledge and dispositions necessary to become informed and engaged citizens. Once again, going back to the point I was making, from the federal government, STEM receives about $50 a student a year, and social studies or civics about a nickel a student a year from the federal government. So what's happening now? Former Senator Larry Pressler, now a college professor, commented about high school civics. They're not learning it there. It isn't being taught. In Minnesota, we require 3 1/2 credits of social studies. That's in state law, encompassing at least United States history, geography, government, and citizenship, world history and economics, sufficient to satisfy all of the academic standards in social studies. There is no assigned credit requirement to teach civics in Minnesota. Civics is supposed to be taught. When it is taught, it's larger than 9th grade, but we can't guarantee. There are schools in Minnesota that don't teach civics at all. Let me digress really briefly here while I've got the 3 1/2 credits before me. Right now, and I would have gone into depth if we'd done the other presentation I have, but right now we are undergoing our standards review in Minnesota. And every 10 years, the standards, that's the broad topics that we teach in social studies, have to be reviewed. Beneath them are the benchmarks. So you have the broad topic and then the benchmark, which is how to teach, but the curriculum still is under the purview of the local school boards. So by next fall, we'll have this review process, I believe, completed. Right now, they've had their first draft, which was met with some controversy. The second draft will be begun here in March, and then completed in May, and the third draft next fall. What I am emphasizing, because of the concerns I have and what's being done with these standards, is that we have to teach, well, basically 3 things I think are important. One is the history. What seems to be lacking in some of the proposed standards out of the first draft is foundational history. And so I'm emphasizing the foundations of history need to be taught. Secondly, there's a lot of emphasis on racial disparity, and that's all important. But we have to make sure that we do emphasize the cultural and racial history of our state and teach that as well. And finally, America. The current proposals are, I think, a little bit lacking in terms of mentioning the good that America has done. Certainly we have warts, certainly our country has made mistakes, but we've also done many great things to impact the world, and that should be considered. So that's my brief standards review. That has yet to be decided what's going to be the final product. Local school boards need to be involved in making their suggestions to this, because in the end, when the standards and benchmarks are completed, the local school boards have to authorize the curriculum that their school districts will be teaching based on those standards and benchmarks. Okay, now back to civics again. Paul Anderson, former Minnesota Supreme Court Justice, said, "Civics education currently suffers from malnutrition, and we need to restore its health. Proper civics education is a key ingredient to our country's future. We need educated citizens if we want to continue to live in a democratic society that cherishes life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." A judge from my hometown of Litchfield, Michael Thompson: "In my role as a district court judge, I saw on a daily basis people who have basically no understanding of how our system of government is set up. There's a lack of awareness that the legislature enacts laws, not the governor or the courts. There is essentially no awareness of what separation of powers means. Priority has been placed on the 3 R's and now the sciences. These are important, but for our society to survive, it is also important that our citizens understand the basic concepts of our Constitution and government structure." Dr. Steve Young, former dean of the Hamlin Law School: "There may be nothing more important for the future of our country than teaching skills on how to work together for the greater good of all. Nothing is more important in public education today than civics." Now, we do require a test in Minnesota. I've been working at this for about 5 years. I kind of go in crusades in the legislature. The restoration of the state capitol was the one immediately before this. And now civics education, I guess, is my crusade. And what I've been able to do so far is to get the civics test established. Now, 26 states require a course in civics. 16 states require a passing score on the National Immigration Citizenship Test in order to graduate from high school. Passing is generally 60 correct out of 100. And so what we have in Minnesota is a test based on the National Immigration Citizenship Test, the test that immigrants take to become citizens. We've made some adaptations to fit Minnesota and to actually get the votes I needed to pass it in the legislature. Our test is 50 questions with a passing score of 30. It is not a requirement for graduation, and the scores from Minnesota schools are not reported to anyone. It has been a high priority of Minnesota School Boards Association to eliminate the test. I don't understand that because, frankly, this test is not really a new test. If our schools are teaching civics, the questions being asked here should be asked in a test anyway. In terms of the scores, there is some concern that we'll have Golden Valley's test scores competing with Wayzata's or something like that, and they're worried about the comparison. We may be proposing this year, there's a bill in the Senate to do this, that there just be one score for the state of Minnesota, an aggregate score that will say this many people took the test in Minnesota and this is how many passed. It should be a high bar in terms of passage, or a high amount. It's been said that you treasure what you measure, and that's why I think there should be some score that's reported, but that remains to be seen. Sample questions for the civics test. It's not a real hard test. What is the supreme law of the United States? The Constitution. I'll just let you skim over what the questions are. These are just a few of them. What do we call the first 10 amendments? The Bill of Rights. Those types of questions are in the citizenship test that immigrants have to take. Now, the reforms that I've tried to do in Minnesota, the test, it's not intended to be an end all, but a beginning. when I taught, my tests were part of the process of learning. If I had my druthers, the test wouldn't be all that we have in the books right now. And I'll explain that as we go through this. But again, it's not intended to be the end, but the beginning. We need more experiential learning, which is learning by doing. I will say that the new standards being proposed, it's not just history. There's also government, economics, geography, other areas. And the civics part of it in the new proposed standards actually looks pretty good. I also believe, and this is, I'll tell you, the bill that we have right now that is in the omnibus bill in the House and yesterday passed in the Senate to be included in their omnibus bill, I believe, is that a course for credit shall be offered to juniors or seniors in the state of Minnesota. And by making it a credit-bearing course, it raises its relevance. And if you teach the course to juniors or seniors instead of primarily to ninth graders, you are teaching it to students when it really makes a difference, really makes an impact. Ninth graders have a lot of interests that are not about government and voting. Juniors and seniors, certainly they have other interests as well, but they are ready to take that next step. They're going to become voters. They're going to become citizens participating in our democracy. And I simply believe it's a lot more meaningful to have that course taught to them and not to the lower grades. I've made or attempted to make numerous compromises to do this. For example, with the electives, the current concern there, remember I relayed earlier that we have all these curriculum concerns within our school districts. And what I have done is to say, okay, if you have a higher level course, if you have a rigorous course, baccalaureate level courses, honors courses, and they have some component of civics in them, then you qualify for the credit-bearing part of this statute. So in other words, there's a little bit of an off-ramp. You don't have to take a separate civics course if one of these higher level rigorous courses that you're taking has some type of civics component. And by the way, again, it doesn't say a credit. It says a course for credit. That could be whatever the school district decides, as long as it's credit bearing. Could be a quarter credit, could be a half credit, could be a full year, 1 credit. That's one of the compromises that I've made. What we have right now, the two things, we have the test, and we have in statute that schools are encouraged to offer civics in 11th or 12th grade. Opposition, for 5 years at least, the School Board Association, Secondary School Principals, Minnesota Association of School Administrators. But I will say this, I've been working closely with these groups, and it's a lot less intense this year in terms of opposition. In fact, the School Board Association has not testified against the bill this year, either in the House or the Senate. They have, there's been a letter where they've had some concerns, which again, I have tried to address. I think we're making some progress in this area. To say that they are opposed today may not be an accurate depiction of their positions. But groups who have been very favorable to it, business groups, Learning Law and Democracy, which is a group that helps to teach civics teachers, League of Women Voters, and also recently endorsing this and actively working for it is a Common Cause. Now, just so that you understand a little bit what some of the opposition is and my rebuttals, there are those who say that it disrupts current social studies course sequencing. Well, it makes sense to offer courses to civics to those about to become voters. It will require an additional social studies course credit. No, as I said, credit bearing, no credit amount is assigned. Districts will have to develop new 11th and 12th grade curriculums. No, they're supposed to be teaching civics now. They should already have a curriculum. And if they really need one, Learning Law and Democracy can provide it. Electives are restricted to juniors and seniors. Some schools have 40 to 50 or to 60 electives and still teach civics to juniors and seniors. A compromise was offered, and that's what I've also explained to you, to exempt students in honors or high-level courses. Litchfield High School, my hometown, teaches civics to juniors or seniors, and they have 50 electives still available to them. Takes away from local control. There is still much flexibility for school boards. The state of Minnesota is responsible for requiring that fundamental knowledge be taught. The school boards can still, again, develop the curriculum. Where there is a will, there is a way, I have been saying. Now, why? What does it do? What is the importance of civics knowledge? It narrows, I believe, the opportunity gap that we have in this state. It increases participation and engagement in our democracy. It empowers minorities. It teaches how to obtain change using our Constitution and our democratic process. And it helps to learn to understand more about current events and how they are impacted. Some comments. Again, Sandra Day O'Connor. The knowledge of our system of government and our rights and responsibilities as citizens is not passed along through the gene pool. Each generation must be taught these basics. Ronald Reagan. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. And me. Civics knowledge is fundamental to our success as a state and nation. We are failing to adequately teach civics in Minnesota. If we continue to teach it as it is being taught now, we will continue to fail. Some general questions. I'm just throwing these out there. I'm not going to give you answers. Why have we minimized civics in our public schools in Minnesota? Why have we made it difficult to give our children even a glimpse of how to run the government before it's their turn to run the government? Why have we kept all this largely unknowable by our progeny for the last 50 years? Why have we even refused to discuss this discard? Why did we do this? With the experience of the last 50 years has already told us is as close to a guarantee of chaos as one can get, and continue to do it, even as we read this page. The results are obvious today. To do nothing is to extend 50 years of failure and reward ignorance. Civics and history education has eroded in the U.S. over the past 50 years, and opportunities to learn these subjects are inequitably distributed, a report states. Dangerously low proportions of the public understand and trust our democratic institutions. Majorities are functionally illiterate on our constitutional principles and forms. The relative neglect of civic education in the past half century, a period of wrenching change, is one important cause of our civic and political dysfunction. So what's going to happen? Right now, we're still uncertain. I've explained to you that as I speak, we have bills alive in the House and the Senate that I would hope are going to become law. It needs to happen now. I urge folks to contact their local legislators. In your area, Representative Freiberg, Representative Winkler. The goal here is to make sure our students can list more presidents than Kardashians when they get out of high school. And now, I'm not going to do this whole thing. I'm just going to do a little bit of this, and then I'm going to end it.
Tim, what do you do?
I'm a security guard up in Seattle Center.
Ah, okay. Now, you registered to vote?
Yeah,
You are? Okay. Do you vote?
sometimes.
Sometimes. How old are you?
19?
19. So you only had one chance to vote.
Yeah,
Did you vote that one time?
no,
No. So you haven't voted at all yet?
yeah.
Right. All right. How many branches of government are there?
Branches of government. I think there's several actually.
All right.
There's the Republican, there's the Democrats, there's
No, those are not branches. Those are parties.
oh, okay, branches.
Have you ever heard of the Bill of Rights?
Yeah.
Now, what is the Bill of Rights?
Pretty lengthy, that's what it is.
It is lengthy. Are you familiar with the Bill of Rights?
Yes, I am.
What are the Bill of Rights?
Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not commit perjury. Thou shalt not, etc. I don't know.
Okay, now let's say you're a security guard.
Mhm.
You arrest somebody. They take the fifth. You've heard that expression?
No,
You never heard that? Someone said they take the fifth?
I'm new.
Oh, you're new. Like, you ever hear somebody say, I'm taking the fifth?
Yeah,
What does that mean?
they're taking the 5th day of the week off. The 5th day of the week off of work.
So if you take the fifth, you get Friday off? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but well, no, if you start on Monday, then it's Friday. But it's the 5th day from the week, the beginning of the week.
Okay, so you go, I'm taking the fifth. That means you got the day off.
Yeah,
What is bipartisanship?
Bipartisanship.
You hear about that. You're in Congress, bipartisanship. What does that mean?
It's like bisexual.
It's like bisexual, same thing, except more partisan.
Partisan.
Well, when is the next presidential election?
January.
Well, let's see. I was going to end this. This is where I have trouble. Well, the next one is questions. So I will just do this. There we go. I'm back. So would anyone have any questions or comments on what I have relayed?
Peggy, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had unmuted myself. I'm sorry. I wanted to say, first of all, this is an absolutely terrific presentation, and thank you very much for putting all this together. But in one of the very first slides that you had up, you had listed the things that were required. And under that, it had government and citizenship. And I'm curious as to how government and citizenship is different from civics. Was it intended to include civics or mean civics? Or was it really intentional to keep civics out?
Again, there's no particular credit assignment for government either. In some areas, there's a civics component of government, but government can be a broader study. It could be, the study of other countries' governments. It could be the study of the United Nations. Civics is more primarily a study of how the American government works and what does it mean to participate in the American government.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Senator, I liked when you said we measure what we treasure. And I put in the chat there, why don't we make high schools the primary polling places? That way high schoolers could be poll workers. That way, knowing that the polling place is going to be a high school, you don't have to guess whether it's a fire station in your neighborhood or is City Hall closer. If the primary polling places for each district started with the high schools and then they added if they needed more polling places, what are your thoughts to that?
Well, yeah, I don't have any, and in some areas they do. I think, I mean, I've voted in schools in the past, but it's not a bad idea. But I guess it's what works out for the town, for the entity that's doing the voting process. But
keeping in mind that school can't have instruction that day. Keeping in mind that school won't have instruction that day. Right. They would need to have a no school day in order to have their elections on site.
Absolutely not.
I actually, when I taught,
how can you have instruction if you're having a voting day on your premises?
The New London Spice School did that.
You have to keep the public separated from the kids, though. So you have to have the ability to
safety purposes with all the gun violence that we have. Keeping people out of schools seems to be.
of course, it's changed a lot since I was teaching. I mean, in those days, you'd have kids walking down the hallways with their shotguns, taking them to their demonstration speech class. So obviously, it's not the way it was before.
So I have a wondering about the difference between civics and government and politics. And I'm wondering if part of the reason that we've gotten so far away from understanding how our government works and how all the pieces, you know, fit together and the processes, is it because, you know, in the past, I mean, I can remember my parents when I was growing up saying, that's politics. Oh my gosh, I can't stand it. And so they don't want to pay any attention to it. So is the competition for people's attention, you know, this sort of turnoff because of, you know, the politics that are played, and people just don't have the stomach for it. So they sort of miss all of the good parts about, you know, the workings of our government and participating as a citizen and all of those things.
Yeah, it could be to some extent, but I don't hear that from people. The political designation, I don't hear, but that's not to say that there aren't people who think that way. However, in a general sense, what I'm hearing from the public is the need for our students to understand how the government works, how change can be accomplished, and to understand it's important for them to participate in the process. So I think in a general sense, that's much more of a reaction. You know, politics is part of our government, yes, but again, there's nothing in our Constitution that talks about political parties. So that they don't have to teach that at all. But again, it is part, I mean, realistically, of what we do.
Well, and I would argue that, I'm sorry, I would argue that that's even more of a reason to have, you know, our students educated on this, and so that they can understand what is the difference between a political party and, you know, the functioning of our government and the processes that we go through to elect our, you know, government leaders.
And, you know, you're right. I mean, people need to understand the difference. And sometimes it gets complicated even for sitting legislators. Many of the time I'm sitting there going, you know, this is just the right thing to do. Why do we have to argue politically about this? So it can be frustrating.
I'm interested in what you had shared, you know, wanting to move it from a 9th grade level education to something for juniors and seniors, kind of being thoughtful of like what's not working with what we're doing right now. And you used a term of Nordic educators, and I've never heard that before. What does that mean?
Well, in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, the concept is different. I've got a book on my shelf here of Finnish education, and in fact, I've had the architect of Finnish education and the author of that book in my office talk about what's important to their education system, and one of the things is the pride in their nation, and that has in recent years become more and more, I think, lacking in our school systems. And again, as I said, there are some not so good things that America has done in our history, and those things should not be ignored. But this world owes an awful lot to what America has done. You know, basically, we've saved Europe in 2 world wars, and those exceptional things that we've done should be part of what is being taught to our students.
I think also is that most people like to know what size their sandbox is. So expanding it does not look like it's advantageous to the stakeholders, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, school board association. I think most of us are aware of what it looks like when a school district goes out for a referendum. When do they try to schedule that most often, Senator? In your experience?
When?
Yes.
Well, an awful lot of them are in the general elections.
Before they expire.
Yes.
In my experience, you try to get it in an off election year, not during a
I know. When you don't have so many people voting.
That's because you've got the phone banks out there trying to get your supporters out there.
No, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, and so many people from your own party are trying to suppress voter participation. They're trying to limit times that you can vote by mail or vote by mail at all. And you're leading a charge that looks a little bit lonely, trying to get more people to vote, more people to understand their government.
You know, did you see the sign that I have had on my door from time to time? Voices crying in the wilderness, heard here.
No, that's wonderful. No, I admire what you're doing and I support it wholeheartedly. And
no, we're going to get this. We're going to get this done. I mean, I have, well, wide Republican support for what I'm doing. And in the Senate, the author yesterday that presented the bill is Democrat. And I've been working closely actually with the Senators Steve Swedzinski. And there's solid Democrat support as well. And frankly, I've had more Democrats coming up to me this year saying, you know, I'm going to support you on this. So hopefully the whip doesn't crack and they can still stay with me and help me.
I've seen a huge increase in people's interest in civic engagement in the last 5 to 10 years of whether it's women of color who've chosen to run. My kids were counting electoral college votes, and I know they weren't the only one. I think that this is very much aligned with our up and coming generations and wanting to be involved. So
it's
hopefully
both parties. It's being involved in our government is not a partisan issue and should not be. And I want people involved in our process. I want them voting. I want them to be able to participate to whatever level or degree that they want to participate. It's important. And again, I summarize for those who think this is not needed. Simply look at where we are right now. Look at again that NAEP survey that I gave. That 3 out of 4 are graduating in failing to master government and civics. And also then just anecdotally look at what's happening in our state and country today in terms of our current events. It's scary. And so just those 2 things, the test scores and what's happening, indicating that we don't know how the system is supposed to work. We've got to change that. Someone in the standards group, and this is a concerning comment to me, made this statement in talking about civic engagement, which is what civics is. The only civic engagement that I want taught in schools is civil disobedience because that's the only one that works. That's a scary thought, and we have to make sure that people do understand that there are other alternatives that we should and supposed to be doing that work.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a very interesting presentation, and thank you for your.
Am I allowed to make a last comment?
Oh, yes, please do.
Thank you very much. That was very illuminating for me personally. But then I'm quick to add that, of course, have you considered choosing alternative avenues of popularizing these particular 2 subjects? Because you realize that even the STEM subjects were popularized through media, through whatever the young people and the educators at the same time. see on television. I am thinking that yes, creating a law is absolutely a very good way of doing it, but also popularizing it, finding ways of synergizing with other entities, maybe outside education, to just popularize civics in the country would go a long way, and perhaps even developing some games, because we have kids spending lots and lots of time on computer games, lots of time on social media. How can you synergize and think a little outside the good old stuff of saying, hey, let's do it this way, let's send it down through education, but let's send it through some of the channels where people are spending so much time, and we begin to send information through their educational teaching them about governance and civics and government. And I do believe that is an alternative, but then I speak from a position of somebody who is a communicator. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And you raise very good points, but that is what I've been stressing. We have what's called experiential learning, and that's learning outside the classroom.
Yeah.
And most of what I'm talking about, the classroom can give you the boost that you need to understand what you need to do to make an impact outside of the classroom. So thank you.
Very much. This is quite interesting. I very much appreciate your time. I think it's important that we all are thoughtful and attentive to the education system that we have in place and the experiences of young people today. Because as I can speak for myself, with my youngest turning 14 today, it happens just like that so quickly. With that, we're going to close with reciting the 4-way test of the things that we think, say, and do. I'm going to pull it up in just a moment. You guys see that okay?
Thank you. I'm going to leave you. I've got another one to get to here.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. The 4-way test of the things that we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build?
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you, everybody, for your time. Great conversation, great questions. Every time I write a presenter, I say our group always has great questions, and it's important to please allow time for them to come through. And again, today was the case. So thank you very much. Nice to see you all. Have a great day. See you next week.
Thank you.
Everyone. Have a good one.